your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
All right, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week we have a topic of awesome anthologies. What did you think of these films?
Well, I actually really enjoyed them. I like anthologies because they allow for creative out-of-the-box scripts for movies that wouldn't normally get fleshed out into longer movies. And then within that shorter time period that they tell the stories, they're allowed to be more creative and suspend a lot of the certain rules of continuity with traditional storytelling, which always makes for some interesting shorts. You know, they can just kind of tell you like this weird story. They don't have to do a lot of back filler, or they don't have to do a lot of character development. They can just tell you short, fun stories. I've always enjoyed,
Yeah, it's kind of like reading a collection of short stories instead of a novel.
Yeah.
You get a quick little snippet instead of deep dive, but they can be really fun.
And they're all usually really different. So it kind of just has a good pacing to it, and it's something different.
Inevitably, I think most anthologies have, a stronger entry, and a weaker entry, and there's some unevenness to it, and kind of you have your favorites, and you go to one of the most famous ones, Creep Show, and there's some really great segments in there that I loved, and then you have like Stephen King as The Lonesome Death of Jody Verrill, and it's like, okay, I could live without this one, but the rest are really good.
What they call that in music, like deep cuts on an album, where they just kind of like, no, this will never be a top charter. Again, it goes back to them. It's a chance for them to be creative and make a 15-20 minute creative movie that no one would give a chance. And sometimes those little shorts turn into be like really the classics.
Yeah. All right, we start with a film from 1963, Black Sabbath, directed by Italian director Mario Bava, who is known for dozens of films in all kinds of genres. But he really created a niche in the horror genre. He really kind of built what became the giallo Italian horror style with his bright colorings and primary colors and staging of scenes. And this film is one of the earliest modern anthologies, and it starts off with a weird intro. Boris Karloff. There's no wraparound story, which is kind of a staple now. He's just introducing the films. He's backlit by these bright primary colors, reds and blues, and it's just a very basic introduction.
Yeah, kind of like the Alfred Hitchcock kind of like, here's some stories we're going to tell you tonight, like kind of presentation.
Yes, exactly correct. That's a great analogy. So it goes pretty much right into the stories. And the first story is called The Telephone, and it's a French girl named Rosie, and she's in her apartment alone, and she starts to get these threatening phone calls, and the caller is watching her. The information he shares over the phone, he can see her every move.
I immediately got the impression for Wes Craven's Scream. I was like, this has to have been the inspiration for that.
Yeah, and When a Stranger Calls, and all these types of movies that start with the phone call. Yeah. I don't know of any of them that are before 1963. So good observation. So he tells her he wants her hot body, but not in the way you think. He wants to strangle her, and he also tells her that she'll be dead by morning.
It sounds like he's known her or something. Like there's some kind of like, it almost has this like revenge feel to it. Like there's a reason he's going to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and then a piece of paper is slipped under the door, showing a newspaper article about a person named Frank who's escaped from prison. And the caller claims to be Frank, and it kind of fills in there's a backstory there, like you mentioned, that maybe has something to do with him being in prison, but clearly very menacing to her that this Frank is on the prowl. So she calls Mary, who is an ex-lover that she broke up with, which I found to be again pretty cutting edge for 1963 to have an open gay relationship at the center of this story. But they don't.
Yeah.
It's
They
just
cut that out of the American version. They didn't put that in the American version.
yes,
Because they
yeah, I
didn't.
read that.
Yeah.
But in the Italian, it's presented as just matter of factly, just
Yep.
hey, her and Mary
Yeah.
had a relationship and they
Yeah.
broke up, and just no big deal.
This movie definitely felt like ahead of its time for 1963.
Yeah. Mary, who did not ever want to break up, eagerly agrees, and she comes over, and I found her arrival to be interesting because she's very lighthearted, she's jovial, she's kind of joking around, and Rosie's really upset and scared, and the two attitudes don't really mesh. I found it to be weird.
Right. She's not like, hey, calm down. What's going on here? She's just coming over there like immediately dismissive of her, hysterical attitude.
Yeah, cracking jokes, and she's
Yeah.
not like, "Are
Yeah.
you okay? I'll be here." It's just
Yeah.
I found it very strange.
But it creates an immediate atmosphere that something's really going on here. What the heck is going on?
Yeah, yeah. She makes her a tea, excuse me, with a tranquilizer in it to
Yeah.
make her calm down. Which
Yeah, and tells her like this is going to work. This is going to relax you. And she's
she
just like,
kind of
okay.
catches her
Yeah.
pouring something into her drink. She's like, well, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
And then she also hides a knife under Rosie's pillow, but she jokes about the tranquilizer that that she's poisoning her for breaking up with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like, okay, that's not really funny
it's
right
pretty,
now.
Right. It's really dark. Yeah.
Maybe it's never funny, but certainly
And
right now
never,
it's not
right.
funny.
But certainly right now it's even more inappropriate. Right. Yeah.
They get into bed together, and it cuts to the middle of the night, and Mary is writing a note, and we see the note. She's apologizing for scaring her, and that she used Frank's escape as a tool to scare her, and she was the one making the calls.
Yeah.
So this was all a setup for Mary to get back with Rosie.
Yeah.
And she's writing a note to apologize that. So it kind of fills us in on maybe why she wasn't scared.
Yeah.
While she's doing this, we see the door slowly open, and we get kind of a POV shot as somebody enters the room, and they're coming up on the woman at the desk, and he grabs a pair of nylons and uses them to strangle Mary from behind.
Yeah.
And so he just wraps them around her neck. No noise. The struggle is minimal, but there's no yelling. There's no.
It's kind of like a gurgly, gaggly, like yeah. And this part threw me off. I really honed in. I was like, what is going on in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it turns out in the struggle, finally, Rosie does wake up, and in the dark where Frank had just strangled this woman from behind, he realizes he strangled the wrong woman.
Yeah.
And he starts stalking slowly towards the bed. There's no screaming. There's no, she's just nervous.
And he says something to her, which is kind of a clue. He says something to the extent of like, you've always like gotten in the way or something like that. Always been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like he's mad at her. Like,
yeah.
Like, why were you here? Like, this wasn't supposed to be you. So it's like immediately there's a connection established right there that they knew each other.
Yeah. And we don't really know the history. I read some things that in one scenario, he was a pimp and Rosie worked for him, and she got him arrested. But again, they don't really touch on that in the version I watched.
Yeah. You watched the Italian version, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Because in the American version, I think this movie's last. They have the order different, and they cut some stuff out. And
that's you're right. They switched up the order. As he stalks towards the bed, Rosie's sitting up, and she remembers that the knife that Mary put under the pillow. And as he gets close, she pulls the knife out and stabs him dead.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of buildup of tension, and it was almost anticlimactic and ended so fast.
Yeah.
There wasn't a real cat and mouse there. It was, cat stabbed and dead. And
Just immediate. Yeah. It was immediate. There was the initial trauma, and then a little bit of like, what's going on here? And then it was over. Yeah.
One thing they did in 1963 that I found distracting is that's the end of the first segment.
Mhm.
As the first segment finishes, they roll a fresh set of credits
Yep.
to introduce the second segment.
Mhm.
Rather than, and they used to put the credits at the front. Now we get the credits at the end. We get some main titles at the front.
Yeah, like the credits initially were like the play ballot. They kind of went because they went off of the original play ballot. Here's your play ballot as you're walking in, sit down, you look at the credits for everything, and then watch a play. And film did that initially, right? And then they kind of got away from that.
But with no wraparound story, and you just end one and start another, the next one starts, with just a whole fresh batch of credits for this particular segment.
Yeah.
So I found that distracting. It kind of took you out of I know it's an anthology, so it's a new story, but it kind of took you out of being immersed in anything.
Yeah, and it's interesting how small editing decisions like that can change the immersion of a movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Our second tale is called The Wurdulak, and it jumps to 19th century Serbia.
And every time I saw Wurdulak, every time I saw that on the subtitles, my brain would freeze. I'm like, a word what?
Yeah, it's not easy to say either.
So, I was like, what is that? Yeah.
But you talked about being able to be creative and jump around. This is a real jump because, it's a complete tonal shift from the first one. It jumps eras. It's a different style of movie altogether.
And it almost has this Hateful Eight feel to it. Like there's the way this kind of stuck in a lodge, kind of not 100%. Just I get what you're saying.
Yeah. In 19th century Serbia, the main character Vlad comes across the corpse with a dagger in it, and he brings the dagger and the corpse to a farmhouse, and oddly enough, just walks in. Apparently that's people were just welcome in other people's homes. He just walks in.
Yeah.
And he sees the space.
It's like a sitcom, like the neighbor in the sitcom just walks right in whenever he wants, like Kramer. Or,
he's Lenny and Squiggy. Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an old reference. People aren't going to know who Lenny and Squiggy are. But he sees
I don't.
Laverne and Shirley.
Old show from the 70s.
Right. He sees a spot on the wall and a matching dagger where this dagger clearly came from, and realizes, it was in this house. And Giorgio comes down with a gun, and somebody just walked into his house, and he says it was his father's dagger. And Vlad says, you point a gun at guests in your home. Yeah. Again, I don't know the etiquette for 19th century Serbia, but Giorgio puts the gun down and is like, and he invites him to stay. Yeah. Which I thought was really strange.
The good old days.
Outside we find Pietro, who is Giorgio's younger brother. He sees the corpse that Vlad brought, and he runs his sword all the way through the heart. And as they come out, he explains to him, hey, this was a Wurdulak, and his father had been gone hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
So Vlad is then introduced to Giorgio's wife, Maria, his son, Ivan, and his very lovely sister, Zdenka. And they tell him about Gorka, who is the father, and who told him if he's not home by midnight, do not let him in, as that means he's a Wurdulak who would drink the blood of those he loves. So we get the impression at this point that a Wurdulak is a vampire-like creature.
Yeah.
And he's riding up just as the clock is striking midnight. And we see that Gorka is actually Boris Karloff.
Yeah, and we can hear this like howling, like dog or wolf or something in the background, just like repetitively as he's walking up there.
Yeah, and it's pretty atmospheric. It's got some of the the fog and the mist and the darkness, and
it's gothic.
Yeah, very much so. Yes. And he comes in and he's behaving strangely. He won't eat meat. He tells the family he wants his dog killed immediately.
Yeah. And they tell him, hey, you got a wound over your heart. Like, why? Like, what happened? And he just kind of dismisses it in like this like really sinister, snarky way. Like, don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't worry about it. Like, he's like, let me patch you up. And he like backs him up. He's like, don't come near me. He's like really aggressive all of a sudden.
Yeah.
He won't explain like, why does he have a wound on him?
Now we're obviously more in tune with what's going on than 19th century Serbians, because we figure out right away something's wrong with this dude, and they shouldn't have let him in.
Yeah, and his skin looks pale, like a little, I don't say pale, like grayish, so
Yeah,
something off, left something off about
ashy.
his skin. Ashy, yeah, it looks ashy. He's got this mark on his chest, looks like he was stabbed. He's kind of being aggressive, and everyone around him is just really like put off, like they're all like looking at you like, what's going on here?
Yeah. He pulls Ali Beck's head out of a bag, and this was the Wurdulock he was chasing.
Yeah.
And this is why Vlad found the headless corpse with the dagger in it. But he's got the head in a bag, and he hangs the head outside on a tree.
Yeah.
To
let everyone know what he did.
All to see, apparently.
Yeah.
And that night, Vlad's sleeping over. He just walks in, and now he's spending the night there. He wakes up to see Gorka's face in the window, and it's a pretty creepy scene.
It's creepy.
He's just right up against it, and he's got that ashen look, and he's got the sunken eyes, and he just looks creepy.
Almost like that trope of like the like the lightning flashes, and you look out the window, and there's something there, kind of thing.
It was done well. You wouldn't want to wake up and look at that.
No.
Gorka goes and takes the sleeping baby Ivan, and he leaves with him. And Vlad sees this out the window, but he finds he's locked in his room. And he finally makes enough noise to stir Giorgio, who lets him out and goes downstairs and finds Pietro is dead, and he with a bite mark. So he gets on a horse and rides off to try to find Ivan, and he's chasing, and Gorka's now crazed.
Yeah.
He's on his horse, and he's holding the child, and he's just now he's maniacal. He's just complete lunatic.
Yeah, he's gone full send. Yeah, he's taking the kid. He's running like it's the cat's out the bag as far as his character. Yeah.
At this point, Vlad tries to convince Zdenka to run away with him and get away from all this. He even tells her that he loves her, and he's known her
8 minutes.
Yeah, like he met her, he went to bed. No, she's a pretty girl, right? But he tells her he loves her. It's just very weird. Yeah,
that's how it was in Serbia. You might not have had a lot of time to live, and they would like, listen, we gotta.
We've been courting for 15 minutes. Let's get on with it. Giorgio returns. We don't see how this happened. He just returns with the child's corpse. He's got Ivan's body with him. And they lay out Pietro, and they lay out Ivan, and he puts a knife into Pietro. But his wife Maria will not let him do that to Ivan. Like, that's my baby, that's my boy.
She's like, I'll kill myself right here, and she grabs a knife. Yeah.
So they decide they're going to bury him instead.
Mm-hmm.
Which they do. And Vlad and Zdenka, they flee. They go off on their own. And of course, because they didn't put the knife through him, Ivan returns from the grave and is at the door, scratching, clawing, wants to come in.
Yep.
And Giorgio and Maria fight over it until Maria stabs Giorgio and lets in Ivan.
Yep.
And it's pretty clear Ivan is not himself anymore.
Yeah.
And Vlad and Zdenka are hiding out in an old monastery. And again, he's telling her how much he loves her, and they find a place to lay down for the night. But in the night, she wakes up, walks outside, and there's Gorka and her whole family now surrounding her. And they're all...
There's some kind of transformation. Yeah, you can see there's like a physical transformation. I kind of laughed at this part, not at the film, but it reminded me of that movie Parasite, where they slowly start to take over the rich people's house. Like the vampire ethos kind of comes in and just one by one takes the whole family out, and then they all become vampires. Yeah, I thought that was really cool, very original.
Yeah, that scene was pretty cool. She walks out of this creepy old monastery, and she slowly is surrounded. But it's her family, but it's not her family.
Again, that very gothic look, like the way they did the lighting and the fog and everything, and it was really cool.
So Vlad wakes up and realizes she's not there and rushes off to find her. He goes back to the family home where she is in bed He finds her just in bed, and she tells him that she left to protect him.
Yeah.
And that he I can't believe you came looking for me. I was trying to protect you. And says, wow, you really do love me. And their faces come together on the bed,
Yeah.
and there's a kiss, and then her mouth moves down to his neck, and she bites him,
Yeah.
and it pulls back, and we had the shot with the father in the window. Now we
Yeah.
have the whole family in the window watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they're all like, you're one of us now. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I would have been like, listen, I don't love you that much. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So our hero Vlad in one evening found true love and wished he never walked into
Yeah.
that home.
It's a metaphor for the dangers of falling in love with someone too early.
I guess so. Yeah.
But I actually like that shot where they do with her eyes. I actually thought that was pretty well done for like lack of like, not having CGI and being a low budget, not having a lot of props. Like her eyes looked greener and they had that dilated look, and they kind of like do that zoom in, and you can like, they're like letting you know she's transformed.
Yeah,
Like
almost
just by
cat-like or
doing that
animal-like.
close up. Yeah. I thought, I was like, wow, that's really good for 1962. I thought that was a cool shot. They didn't have a lot to work with, but it worked. It created tension, and it conveyed what was going on without anyone speaking. I liked it.
Yeah. Then it cuts to the third and final portion of the anthology. It's called Drop of Water, and tonally it matches the first one. The first one and the third one could have taken place in the exact same world. They're modern times for 1963. They match. The one in the middle just is so far out and different that it's hard to tie.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah. But maybe it's meant to do that, to kind of like have this like, beginning, climax, and then kind of go back to that.
Yeah. A nurse is called at home late at night, and she's been called to prepare the body of an elderly medium who died. And upon arriving, we see the body. And this scene is, I read a lot about this scene because when we're first exposed to this woman's body, it is ghastly. Her mouth is pulled back tight, like the teeth are exposed. Her eyes are sunk in but bulging, and her skin is pallid. She's just a super frightening visage.
I was taken back by that prop. I was like, whoa, that's creepy. Like, that'd be like someone, I wonder, like someone owns that prop. It still exists to this day. You know what I mean? I was like, that's got to be like a really famous piece of like art. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was really cool.
If you put it in a movie today, people would laugh at it.
Right.
For 1963, it is incredibly creepy.
And the way the eyes just like they glare right at you when you're watching it, like those eyes are looking at you. It's like, it definitely created that tension, and it was impressive.
The maid tells the nurse that no one will come to the funeral because they're afraid of ghosts, and that the old woman died during a seance. So the nurse starts prepping her for her, prepare for the funeral, and she sees a sapphire ring on her finger, and she takes it. And as she takes it, she knocks over a cup of water, and the ring falls to the floor. And while she's down looking at it, the spilling water is just dripping. Drop, drop, drop.
And it sounds really loud because this house is like palatial. It's really, it's a big house, massive fireplace, big curtains and tapestries everywhere. It just felt like it was like in some like a mansion or something like that. So
like a heck of a living as a medium, apparently.
Yeah. So like the noises kind of reverb and have this echo throughout the house. So it's kind of creepy.
A large fly lands on the dead woman's hand where the ring was, and it won't leave. She shoos it away, and it keeps coming back, and it's big, and it's just nasty fly. We cut back to the nurse's house. She's home, and she's putting on the ring, and she's admiring it. She's, look at this pretty sapphire ring.
Yeah, got me a nice little score. Yeah. Could tell this is what she does, maybe.
Maybe, or it just opportunity was there, and she just took it. But
she took it. Yeah.
We hear the water is now dripping in the kitchen, and it's mirroring the sound of the spilled water, drip, drip, drip. And So
So
she
she's
goes
walking
in.
around trying to look for it. Like, where's that coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, she shuts off the kitchen. Then there's dripping in the bathroom. Then she shuts off the bathroom, and then her umbrella that got wet outside on her walk to the house and back. Now her umbrella is dripping, and the dripping is inordinately loud.
Yeah.
So she can't get rid of the dripping, and the lights go out, and paranoia kind of starts to set in for her. She lights a candle, and she's getting more nervous by the minute. And she goes into her bedroom and finds the woman's corpse in her bed. And it just looks
Yeah,
as
very
ghastly
eerie
as it
scene.
did before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only now it's moved to her bed for some reason.
Yeah.
And the prop starts to sit up.
Yeah.
And
It's got this like bizarre, like the way they design the mouth, like you can't tell if it's like laughing, smiling, or like making like a deranged look. Like the way they did it was so ambiguous. I was like, that's really clever.
yeah, it was that was the image that stuck with me most of this movie was the woman.
Yes. Yeah.
So she runs out of the room only to find the same woman sitting in a rocking chair in her living room with a cat.
Yeah.
And then
Just
she sees
staring
her,
right at her. Yeah.
yeah. And the next thing you know, the woman's behind her, almost floating up to her. And
Yeah.
again, there's this creepy thing starts moving around. It just adds layers of creepiness to it.
Yeah. And then you get like the hand like kind of creeps around the corner, like just the fingers. That's all you can see.
So at this point, the nurse is begging her for forgiveness. And somehow she ends up with her arms and she strangles herself to death. And the police.
Yeah, it was almost like a possession kind of thing. Like you can see the hand of the ghost or whatever she was. You can see her hand going towards her throat, and then it kind of like disappears and like amalgamates like into her and causes her to be strangulated. And then she just falls over and dies. And then she has that just stuck that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And the police find her body, and she's just, dropped like this. And all they find is a scar on her ring finger where the ring used to be. And her face is in, I guess, madness is all you would call it. And it's frozen like that.
Yeah. Like she stared into the void of emptiness and madness, and you could say lost her soul, but that's how you'd look if you saw that thing in your room, whatever that lady was.
One thing in the cool ending was as the police are wrapping up, you hear dripping in the background.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the final story. And I'd say the one thing I didn't like is at the very end, we go back to Boris Karloff, and he's in his Gorka costume. And
this was a little odd what they did. Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. He's riding a horse and he's talking, but then the camera pulls back and we see it's a fake horse. It's a stage prop.
And there's people running around the camera with fake little trees to make it seem like he's moving.
To make it seem like he's moving.
There's silly music playing. It's like,
as much as I appreciate Mario Bava movies and all the great work he's done, and Black Sunday, Bay of Blood, Planet of Vampires, Hercules in the Haunted World, I hated that scene. I thought it was
well, I wonder if that was nowadays they have bloopers. I don't even know if they do bloopers anymore, but remember you'd get a DVD and you'd have bloopers.
Yeah.
And you'd watch them. I wonder if that was just they were just kind of adding that in there. Relax, guys, it's not that serious. Because it was maybe some of it was so offensive back then. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't like it.
It was odd. It was odd.
Completely wrong. But
yeah, it ruined it I was like, come on. They could have just ended it on a dark note. And I was like, what's this? But it's kind of whatever.
The whole movie's dark. There is no lighter moments. There's no comedy mixed in to throw that at the end.
There's no joking.
Just completely
throws the whole vibe off. I was like, why did they do that? And the only thing I thought it was that's got to be an original 1960s version of a blooper,
Yeah, pull the curtain back.
Quentin Tarantino used this movie as inspiration for Pulp Fiction. Yeah, when he saw this, it kind of gave him. He was like, "I want to make a movie like this. I want to do like," and it kind of came up with the idea of like Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction was originally going to be like 3 different story movies, and he was going to do, but ended up being what it is.
Yeah.
This inspired him to want to make Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, cool. Great little nugget.
Yeah.
All right, our next film in the anthology category is All Hallows Eve, 2013, by Damien Leone, who also, as including directing, he also was the editor, the writer, and did the special effects. So this is a true guerrilla style, independent, make a movie, and he did all those jobs, which is pretty amazing.
2 of them, Terrifier was a short by 2011, I think, and then the first one that we'll get to, the first story that they're watching, that was a short called The Ninth Circle in the subway. Yeah, so that was just an 11-minute short, and then they kind of like redid it and put it in this movie. So that's so guerrilla style. That's how we got to start, by just doing shorts.
Which is
somewhere.
Well, just a great story, and just you love to see that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We start with the babysitter trope. We got Sarah, and she's watching 2 kids on Halloween night, and they're watching Night of the Living Dead. And
which goes, it's weird. It kind of goes back to the Christmas Eve thing that we talked about. And Let Me In. It's like, well, where are the parents on? Like these are just kids. Like that's the one night of the year you spend with them. Like, they never explain it. They just kind of like say she did a favor. So for all we know, they could be at a work convention thing. Who knows? But like they're not there.
Yeah. And it's weird that they already have trick or treated. They have their bags of candy. Yeah. And then they're talking about we're going to go
carving pumpkins. It's a little late for that.
Late for that. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Like that don't make no damn sense. But of course, they're watching Night of the Living Dead because it's in public domain. So amateur filmmakers, anybody can display Night of the Living Dead. You don't need any copyright for it. So,
that's cool.
Timmy finds a VHS tape in his candy bag, and the kid's convinced the babysitter that they want to watch it. And you don't know what's on it. Could be a porn for all you know. You just don't know.
But, never do that. Yeah,
she puts it in anyways, just to see what's going on. And
the kids are a little bratty. They're kind of jerks. They're kind of mouthy, and she's kind of mouthy back to them, like like the bitchy aunt. You know what I mean? But like you can tell, like she loves them, but she's she's a friend of the family. But like they just have these, like they're kind of going back and forth a lot. It's kind of funny.
And she's not she's not like a 16-year-old girl babysitting. She almost seems like she's like 30.
She seems like she hates kids, and she's doing this as one favor, like I'm just here because like you and my mom, your mom and I are like great friends. It's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah. So our first story starts with a woman, Casey, alone in a train station. And sure enough, Art the Clown shows up, and he starts harassing her. He's honking his horn. He's giving her a flower with a creepy giant bug crawling out of it. And then finally he drugs her. He injects her.
Yeah, she gets up to leave, and he all of a sudden gets serious and grabs her by the arm and pulls a needle out. And I was just like, this is insane.
He
stabs her in the hand.
Yeah, right in the hand. I thought that was like, of all places.
Yeah.
He's Art the Clown, but he's more like a mime. With the white face, and he doesn't speak, and he does the movements. He's like half clown, half mime.
I think he technically is a mime. Like he's called Art the Clown, but he's a mime. That's actually one of the coolest things about his character that I think is so original and adds to his like the creepiness, is that he doesn't make any noise.
Yeah,
like ever. Even when you hurt him, he doesn't make a noise.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
as we'll see. Casey wakes up in she's in like a tunnel, and she's chained with 2 other girls. They're all chained up in this dark tunnel, and they're talking about maybe they should follow the chain and try to get out. And one of the girls her chain is snatched, and she is dragged down the corridor, screaming. So they're like, well, maybe we should.
The girls are just horrified.
Yeah, maybe we should, before that happens to us, try to get out.
Yeah. She's like, listen, I'm thinking of my family. I want to see them again. We're not going to get out of here if we don't take the initiative to get out of here. We need to move.
Yeah. They start walking down this dark corridor, and they encounter like this giant deformed man. He's huge.
Monster.
He looks very much like the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah,
Uh,
melted body. Yeah,
and he's got a cleaver, and he cleaves the one girl up into pieces, and he inadvertently cuts the chain, freeing Casey. So I don't know what he was supposed to be. He's just this big deformed monster. It didn't look that great. Again, this is a low budget movie.
Yeah.
So Casey gets free, but she very quickly gets caught, and she's tied down by some hooded figures, and they kind of look like witches. At times, they kind of look like Muppets. Right?
Yeah.
They're like witch
evil
Muppets.
Yeah.
Very weird.
I got the same vibe from that. Yeah. They're like this cloaked evil Muppets. Yeah.
Yep. And they have another woman who's pregnant, and they have her
which is
chained
horrifying,
up.
by the way. If I saw a cloaked, that's a horrifying concept. I'm not making light of that. A cloaked evil Muppet would scare the crap out of me.
Yeah. Well, and especially they got you tied up, and they have the pregnant woman chained up on the wall, and they cut her open and remove the fetus and catch the blood in a goblet.
And at this point in the movie they're watching, the babysitter doesn't turn this off. I would have immediately been hitting the power button. Like, that's one of the most vicious things you can show.
Yeah. We go all the way to the end, which we get to see Satan, who drinks the blood and then moves forward, proceeding to he's gonna rape Casey.
Yeah, and he takes a step forward, and like there's smoke coming out of his mouth to make it seem like satanic. Yeah, and I don't know why. Like, I immediately think, like, I know what he did. He took a drag of a cigarette, and then they said, all right, and then they filmed it, and he blew it out, and like you could just tell it.
I thought the exact same thing, and I was thinking, again, amateurish in some of the special effects. Right. I think it could have benefited by maybe keeping some stuff in shadow and showing a little bit less.
Yeah. But I'm always interested, like, in how they do, like, prosthetics or special effects and stuff like that. It always runs through my head when I'm watching movies. Sometimes it's very much like watching a magician. Like, how did they do that? You know what I mean? And other times you can just tell.
Yeah. And I love special effects, and I love to see every little bit I can see. But when you know they're not professional grade, you might want to hide them a little bit more. So that's the end of that tale. We almost assume that Casey will now become the next woman with a baby hung up, and this cycle will repeat itself. So it's there's no hope or redemption at the end of this story. It's just awful.
No, it's just awful and sadistic, and that's kind of the theme of this entire movie.
Yeah, for sure. Well, at this point, after we saw all this, the babysitter finally shuts the tape off and sends the kids to bed.
The young kid's like, that was awesome. Like, it's the typical 14-year-old punk kind of.
Yeah. But Tia, the girl, is scared, and she ends up getting in bed with her brother Timmy. And Sarah goes back downstairs and starts watching the tape alone. Like, okay, she wasn't that appalled by it because she put it back on.
Well, she says she was like, if I'm telling them to go to bed and stop being, like, afraid of the movie, why can't I finish it? And she almost has this, like, ego moment where she's like, I'm finishing this.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. Yeah.
Our second segment is a woman named Caroline. Her and her husband just moved to a country home, but he's gone, so she's alone unpacking out at this new house in the middle of the country. And outside there's a bright light and a crash, and the power goes out. She can't get through on her phone. She goes out to the car to leave, and her car's not working. It's like an EMP went off, like no electronics.
EMP, I was gonna say, yeah.
So finally, she's walking around. She thinks, now there's noises. Is somebody in the house with me? Her husband finally calls and gets through, but she quickly loses the connection. And then in her travels, she sees an alien, or a circa 1910 scuba diver.
Yeah, it looked like Black Manta from the Aquaman comics. It's like,
exactly
I don't know
what I was going to say. I didn't know if people would get the reference. I used to watch the Super Friends when I was a kid, and the Black Manta was there. That's exactly what this looks like.
Yeah.
It's very cheesy.
Yeah.
She manages to pull one of his vacuum hoses off of his head,
Yeah.
so gets away.
He's got her cornered in the bathroom. He's trying to like, he has some like bug or something like that. He's trying to like put in her face or something like that. And she like rips the hose and starts running. Yeah.
Yeah. So she gets away and is hiding under the steps. And of course, now her cell phone rings and giving away her location. So the alien stalks into her, grabs her, and is dragging her away. And her husband's a painter, and he's dragging her through his studio or where he has portraits.
Yeah.
And she grabs one of the covers on her way by. And as she gets
she put
away,
a sheet over it. She put the sheet over it because she said she was on the phone in the very beginning saying she hated it. She was talking to French like, I can't stand being in the same room with this painting. It's so creepy. I have to put a sheet over it. So then the alien, like you said, is dragging her through, and then she starts grabbing the sheet off of it.
And as she's dragged away, we see the sheet pulled down to expose a portrait of Art the Clown.
Yeah, just a gnarly looking, creepy, like sadistic looking portrait of him.
Yeah, and that's the end of that tale. So she's captured. She's probably going to be subjected to alien probes or whatnot.
Who knows?
I thought this was the weakest segment. The alien, we talked about leaving certain things in shadow. If you went to buy this as a Halloween costume, you would put it back. I thought it looked poor. It definitely could have been kept hidden mostly.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about being creative and outside of the box with a lot of the things when they do these short films. I understand. I feel like I understand what they were going for. Like they wanted to get out of the typical tropes of horror, and they were trying to just look for that like gray alien kind of monster that like invades your house. Like we see about, like we don't see a lot of like UFO home invasion horror movies. Like it's an interesting concept because we see these like abduction movies that are like based off this real story, and that there's a lot of accounts and books written of alien abduction, but we never see like a real horror movie about that. I think they kind of we're experimenting for a little 20-minute thing, trying to do like an alien UFO invasion horror movie. Like what would actually happen if an alien like invaded into your house? You know what I mean? Like, and all as cheesy as it was, I think they were trying to go for something outside the box.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it gives you a chance to be creative with your different tales.
Yeah. Yeah. But the Black Manta thing, I couldn't get over it.
Yeah, same. At this point, Sarah hears noises, so she stops the tape and she goes upstairs. Thinks the kids are messing with her, but she finds them both in bed.
And as far as the anthologies go, I love how creative they were with this. The previous movie, Black Sabbath, was just 3 separate credit rolling stories, whereas this is 3 movies but within a movie. So they're telling the story through these 3 different stories very creatively.
I actually like the wraparound story, probably better than I like any of the individual stories. I actually thought the wraparound with the babysitter and the kids, which we'll get to the conclusion, but I actually like that, I think, better than the tales themselves. So you're right, it's a great wraparound. So after, thinking she hears noises, she goes back and continues watching the tape, and we start our final segment. A woman pulls into a gas station where we see the attendant is kicking out Art the Clown because he urinated and smeared feces all over the wall.
Yeah, and he's just laughing about it, like, what are you gonna do? Yeah.
So he kicks him out, and now he's giving the woman, our main character, directions, and he hears a noise back inside the station. So he says, you got to go in and check it out. After a while, he doesn't come back out. So the woman goes inside to see what's going on. And she finds Art the Clown sawing the attendant up into pieces with a hacksaw.
Yeah, it just looks right up at her and just keeps doing it. Just keeps doing the motion while he's looking at her and smiling. Yeah.
Yeah. Very unnerving. She runs out.
Yeah.
She pukes. And then she gets in her car and she takes off. And she calls the cops, and she's trying to, she's
hysterical.
Yeah. And she's trying to say what's going on. And then she sees Art hitchhiking down the road. which is
Yeah.
defies logic how he got ahead of her, but there he is.
Right. Well, yeah, he has this supernatural vibe to him. Like he's not flying around, he's not doing, but yeah, there's these supernatural vibes that he gives off throughout the entire movie. Because
Yeah.
like, well, the first one is like, why is he in these VHS movies?
Yeah.
Right. Like how did like so like yeah, they're kind of like continuously hinting at it. It's getting more paranormal.
Yeah. She sees a parked car pulled off the side of the road, and she pulls up behind it, running, yelling, asking for help. And she finds a woman with her face cut off. And so she screams, she gets back in the car, and she takes off again. And now we find Art is in the back seat. And he pulls a bag or cellophane over her head, and he's suffocating her.
Yep.
And she smartly slams on her brakes and launches Art into the front seat.
Yep.
She gets out of the car and she runs off, and she's hiding in a small garage or a large storage shed.
Little barn, something like that. Yeah.
She's hiding, she's hunkered down, she's rattled, and we see a hand come up through the dirt floor, and slowly Art the Clown climbs up through the dirt floor, and he's in there with her. And he's got chains with various sharp implements into the chains, and he's whipping her with it.
One of them's a syringe. I was like, this is so vicious.
Yeah.
It's a dirty syringe.
That reminded me of
the
Saw, where for some reason falling into a pit of syringes is just creepier than falling into a pit of knives. Yeah. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah. Well, because it implies disease too, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah, right. While he's whipping her, one of the blades comes out and is on the ground.
My favorite part of the movie, Jerry.
She picks it up and stabs him in the eye. We always get an eye for you.
Yeah, we have changed this podcast to stabbed in the eyes.
yeah, true. It's so prevalent. I never thought about it before, but you can't go 2 movies without somebody getting stabbed in the eye.
Right.
Yeah. Then he falls down. She stabs him in the back, and then she takes off. She flags down a car going down the road. Hysterically, she gets in, and she's riding with this driver who's trying to rescue her. And Art comes chasing in her car, pulls up alongside of him, and shoots the driver in the head. His head bursts all over the front seat, and they smash into a tree.
Which I love that, because in slashers they never use guns, but Art the Clown doesn't care.
I thought it struck me as like, wow, he's even using guns. Like that's just
he can just
out
use
of character.
A gun. Yeah, he doesn't. But he doesn't have to use hack. He just likes doing that, like knives and stuff. But it's like, I'll use a gun. I don't care.
Yeah. So the car smashes, and then we cut to our woman wakes up, and she is on a table, and Art's there, and we see the camera slowly pull out, and all of her limbs are missing, and nasty names are carved into her torso.
Yeah, just vicious slurs are just like carved into her, and she's all sewn up. He took the time to like sew her up, and she's still alive. Yeah.
She's alive, and just completely limbless with all these awful things carved into her, which is just horrible.
Yeah, he's just sitting there laughing. Yeah,
and she screams, and the tape ends. As the tape ends, we go back to the babysitter, Sarah, and her phone rings. Kind of makes her jump because she was into this, creepy chase movie. And when she answers the phone, the other end of the phone is the phone call the girl just made in the last segment, where she's trying to tell the cops what's going on. That phone call
dialogue
is being spoken into her phone, which is completely baffling to Sarah. It's unsettling. And I thought that was a great twist in the movie.
It makes for a great warp of like reality as far as what this tape is.
Yeah. And of course the tape comes back on all on its own. And it goes to Art, and he looks like he's in a basement. He comes right up to the camera, and he knocks on, so it's like he's knocking on the inside of the TV.
Yeah.
And
like it's like glass. Like he like looks up and like looks at her. Yeah. It's like you said, it's unnerving.
Oh, and then they cut, and the screen on the television is her. and Art is sitting on the couch behind her, honking his horn.
Yeah. And she freaks out and turns around, but he's not actually on the couch. And then she turns back around, but he's on the couch behind her on the screen. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool too. So he keeps getting
I
closer
thought it was excellent.
on the screen, and when she turns, he's not behind her, but on the screen he keeps getting closer. So in a panic frenzy, she finally gets the tape out of the machine and smashes it. So maybe she prevented Art from getting to her. We don't know, but she got the tape out, and then she hears screams from upstairs. It's Tia and Timmy are both screaming. She runs upstairs, and a bloody Art the Clown is standing outside of their door, and he kind of ushers her in, like, hey, go take a look. Then he disappears.
I thought that scene was, I love that scene right there when she comes around the corner and she like freezes and looks up, and like they kind of make her face go all white with like they like light everything up, and like they zoom in on it real quick. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
It's good. It was good cinematography.
Yeah, no, that was, again, I thought the wraparound was the best part of the whole thing. It was creepy. It was well acted. Some of the other parts maybe had some questionable parts, but she opens the door.
I agree 100%. I thought she was a great actor.
And the kids are all dismembered. They're all cut up all over the bed. And it says Art the Clown written on the wall in blood. And that's the end of the movie. It's
just screaming in horror with two decapitated kids.
Yeah, there's not a single uplifting or a hopeful moment in any of the tales, including the wraparound story. And it's as you mentioned, it's the first feature film with Art the Clown. He had appeared in a short before, and he went on to do Terrifier,
which they just reused for this.
Yep. Mike Gianelli played Art in this particular movie, but David Howard Thornton takes over for Terrifier and Terrifier 2. And, this was kind of a low budget film, but you can see the passion in the filmmaker. I just think at some point, with him being the special effects guy and the director, I think he was too willing to show his own special effects work, and some of it wasn't top notch. But you love his ingenuity, you love his passion, and I think with Terrifier and Terrifier 2, I think he just kept getting better.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses along his career, because this is just the beginning, and he's doing it all with low budget. I think Terrifier was like $35,000 budget. It was, I don't know what this movie was for this budget. I didn't look into it, but yeah, he's doing a lot with a little, and I think as he can get more more funding, and you can outsource a lot of that stuff like special effects and get more people on board, who knows what he can do.
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit, and we saw with the huge success of Terrifier 2 last year that it did big numbers for a low budget movie, and I think it's opening the door to a lot of things. But I don't know if you're ever going to see this at your mall Cineplex at noon on a Tuesday, because he's very bloody, is very graphic. If you like that kind of thing, makes an enjoyable movie.
Yeah, I really enjoy them. I haven't seen Terrifier 2 yet, but I saw the first one, and everyone tells me the second one was way more gruesome. So I'm looking forward to that.
It definitely is. Of course, you get the real famous scene from the first one with the chainsaw and the woman split in half.
Yeah.
But overall, the second one is far more gruesome. And anyway, so
does anyone get stabbed in the eye?
I don't recall. Well, I bet they do. Just
then I'll be fine. Yeah.
So that's our show on anthologies. It's a format I really do enjoy. I grew up. I loved Creepshow, Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, all those kinds of movies.
Crypt when I was like 8 years old. Yeah, staying up late watching Tales from the Crypt as a kid. So
yeah, a lot of cool anthologies out there. Some better than others. I almost chose for was Dead of Night from 1945. Which is generally considered the first anthology, and according to a lot of critical analysis, it's still the best. And I haven't actually seen it, so I'll definitely have to catch up on that. But
I'm gonna have to watch that. And again, I think we can revisit anthologies again down the road.
Absolutely. Well, that's our show for this week. We thank you as always for listening. We appreciate you checking us out each and every week, and we'll be back next week. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jerry.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.